Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the teachings. Geshe, we can start with the prayers.
Yes.
Sure, I'll share my screen. Okay, we will start with the prayers, taking refuge and generating bodhicitta. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By my accumulations of the practice of giving and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By my accumulations of the practice of giving and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By my accumulations of the practice of giving and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. We will do the 4 immeasurables. May all sentient beings have happiness and the cause of happiness. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and the cause of suffering. May all sentient beings not be separated from the bliss that is free of suffering. May all sentient beings live in equanimity, free from attachment and hatred towards those near and far. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings not be separated from the bliss that is free of suffering. May all sentient beings live in equanimity, free of attachment and hatred towards those near and far. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and the cause of suffering. May all sentient beings not be separated from the bliss that is free of suffering. May all sentient beings live in equanimity, free from attachment and hatred towards those near and far. Thank you for joining in the prayers. And thank you everyone who all are here for this teaching from so many time zones. Welcome everyone. And a lot of gratitude to the translator who is here and Mele Chamse Center. Thank you, Geshe. We can start with the teaching. Thank you.
Leg to everyone. So welcome for fifth session. So within 2 months, I hope you was very free, also enjoy. So now today's the fifth session. I think, yeah, sixth session. So last time we have discussed so many topics. So these are things you have remember these all topics. Today also we are short review what we learned so previous sessions. Okay. Wait just 5 minutes. It's internet problem. The level has internet problem, so he will join as soon as possible.
Ishala, today is sixth session.
Yes, six session. Okay, six session. Yeah.
Sixth session. Yeah.
So did today main session before we few minute meditation. Okay. Actually, meditation, very simple meditation. So meditation, when we do meditation, so before the body posture, actually the body posture that so your cross leg. So some people difficult to full cross leg. Then whatever comfortable you can do like that. And your eye look your nose, your back straight, and pull your body just relax. Your leg, lower back, stomach, upper back, and chest, your neck, head, all body just relax. And few times there are breath meditation. So breathing, when we're doing the breathing meditations, you pay attention your mind to breath. So when breath in, so all energy come in from all direction. When you breath out, all negativity come out from your body and your mind. Okay. So now breath in, breath actually from your nose, just normally, just nature or breath. Not don't pause. First breath in, and breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. So this is just a very simple meditation, breath meditation. So this is very easy to meditate. So focus to breath. So breath is our nature, part of our nature. So we do this naturally when we sleep also. Okay, this is just a simple meditation. So then now also I think Lapala also already John. So then Lapala, welcome.
Just delay. Very sorry for the delay.
It's okay. It's okay. Now. Okay, then let me say before previous our session. So 네 당보대당 내니 딩글랑한테 티셔줘라. 다딜라 마 게십도 가시스 통동도 지셔놨어.
So Geshe said that he would like to do a small sort of recollection or revision of what we have already discussed in the previous session.
아니 나 당보대만 안돼 지부 충전 심부숨시다 지부 충우다 도망을 남들에 시도되네 주룩시라 다 주룩네 당보대라 아니 파마라 그 봐서 돼 또서 아니 니네라 빼봐서 아니 요몽라 트라타바스 되네 파기요 콤바스 아니 소바 콤바스 ngabatel chobadela kusumji choba payo chachusa ni dumbadela chi mirangsin sheba chene ane tol tokchu kuzusa ngata na ngazule de nyomong ngonjurji nyimbo kumzusa ta denjege gana sajero dendo rosa do dendo ane ngote to chungchung yin bala songchen min tamche.
So previously we have studied, we have already discussed the practice of the person of the sort of like the beginners sort of mindset, those who are considered to be the lowest or the beginner practitioner, in which we have studied in total there are 16 different practices, out of which we have discussed the practice of such as revering one's parents, understanding the arising sort of like arising afflictions, and then practice of heedfulness, practice of tolerance, and such. And so today we're going to discuss about how to identify the arising affliction and to talk about the sort of antidote towards these afflictions.
진행한 적에 디 쇼로가 디레다 니슈잡시바데 니슈잡시바 데데 원베코던베 페니언스시 디레 다텔라 직대 가서나 간다 원보 투유 남나니스 따도 메데 유다 간다 직스 용어는 다소 레제 대달레스 케나 원베 바랍 라바송스 디 시딩 직대 디레시.
So for today's session, we're going to start with the 24th verse. So in which it says, Nagarjuna says, in choosing between one who conquers over the constant and unsteady engagement of the sixth sense organ towards the object, and the one who conquers the enemy's army in battle, the wise know the first to be a far greater hero.
다 되게 가르쳐 보세요. 나 당한제 남자 준동한 저기 왕봉하게 다 율로방도 쇼도 가서 가르쳐 봐이나 배차잖아 미국 왕봉이나 수 치료 속 제발라 속보다 나스 디제네 속 제바다 미도벌 되는 차단지에 속 아니 되는 신게 나가 왕봉나 단년 받은 미니벌 속 어딘데 저는 대왕도 다 쫓대보다 배나 어 류지 왕봉이나다 렉자라 속 근데 왕도 좀 아니 제 왕봉이나다 세 어딘데 왕도 다 왕봉하게 먼저 에 왕도 가서 뒤는 거 되거든. 저때 가서 가서는 왕봉 같을래 왕도 먼저 봐. 전절 넘버 제 버려서. 그 전절 넘버 제 되어이나 당은 저 지당에 남지게 제때 용다겠다. 맞아 봐이나. 다들 넘버 제서는 다 쉬버려서 그래. 어다 딜레 사가다 왕봉을 제 되어이나. 아니 잘래 아니 넘버 제 벌 사버려서 다 좀. 네. 고물을 좀 됐습니다.
So, usually, we see that we are always being driven or being controlled by the sort of like by by the input of our five sensory senses, such as the sense of the eye, the sense of the ear, the sense of the nose, the sense of the tongue, and the sense of the body. For instance, the sense of the eye, when it sort of catches or collects uh, a sort of like an image of someone being beautiful, it gets captivated, because of which it gets controlled, and all sorts of thoughts arises within oneself. Similarly, the sense of ear, when we hear some sort of like a sound or a music that is very pleasant to the ear, we get captivated because of these things, and then we tend to incline towards these things. And similarly, such as the body, which craves for touch, the tongue that craves for taste, and so on. So we see that, for example, for the sense of the eye, when we see something beautiful, trying to meditate on the fact that whatever that we see as a beautiful form is not in reality as beautiful, and then to recall all sort of like the ugly and the repugnant component of that particular body towards our eye has been driving us to feel captivated. And so it is as being someone to practice, it is our obligation to not be controlled by these five senses, and to be able to be free from its control and grasping. And so, therefore, we should understand how it exaggerates, and then how to be free from these control of these five senses. And it is said that a great sort of like the martial general who is able to conquer a great army, the wise knows that the one who is able to control over his own inclination towards the exaggeration of the five senses is a far greater hero than the martial general who is able to conquer a great army in the war. And this is what Nagarjuna says in this verse.
뭔데지? 하여튼 디스 조스는 마음도 사서 말아. 야.
That's
대셔 저거 전에도 먹자 다이나 때 로로도 진짜 좋아했어.
So Geshe said that if we continue going in depth on this particular verse, we might as well discuss upon this for a very long time. So because of the time constraint that we have to finish the entire text, we're just going to brush through with sort of like a very brief explanation.
나도 이제 내가 니슈장가 봐도 니슈장가 봐대 안에 다들 잡을라 근데 송거다 고물로 이렇게 지단게 되자겠니 뭐 되자려는 방법에 상한테 쉬면 봐 근데 대용하다 잡고 여러 된다네 아니다 속도 틀어 잡아 된다je 단대 가서 아니 저거 배면을 잡고 있는 뭐 손다 다 잡아 대전형 뭐에다 고물로 둘라잖아 배면을 근데 차야 요 말에 딱 배면 차야 돼 저랑 배면 속을 차대 버렸어 또 속대 한신 된 엄마마 식셔와이나 아저 엄마한테 또 부대 보면 수인의 제발 좀 찍고 되지 않았어 수크란싱아도 야보따바이나 먼저 둘러줘서 둘러대만 내내만 빡빡좀 요죠 빡빡만 배워이나 먼저 그 되자지야겠다 시고로 요면서 자다 나다 근데 그 답에 저 동안은 남산 쪽면라 근데 랑싱저레스 랑싱 엄마 때가 좋대 저선 다 들려야 하는 잡았지 요 말했어 랑시 ngoma 되리 당가저 랑시 ngoma ngoma 줘봐 야나 ngotene 다 되자 왕도 전에 잡았죠 대 ngoma 때라 근데 자기가 요요 말해서 다대야 부드 보면 수이나 잡았지요 말했어.
So in this 25th verse, so the heading says to consider the faults of the object of attachment and of the subject who is attached. So when we talk about attachment, as we have discussed previously, there are many different attachment to many different things, the worldly things that we can be attached to. But in this particular verse, Nagarjuna is telling to the king Gautamiputra about the attachment towards the sort of like the body to be attached to a woman, and then how attachment arises because of the factor being the body of the woman, the beauty and the body of the woman. And so he says that there is sort of no essence in this particular thing, because when we try and analyze the reality of that body, for example, it doesn't matter if one is attached to a woman or a man or a man. So when one uncovers the sort of like the clothes, and then when they start to see beyond the skin, every one of us know that inside we're nothing but flesh, pus, blood, and then bones. And then when we try to contemplate on that very fact, to see beyond that exaggeration, we see that it is something that is very sort of like unpleasant to us, something that makes us vomit, something that makes us feel uh, sort of like dejected towards that particular thing. So therefore, it is very important to see beyond the exaggeration and then see the reality of that body. Many a times, some of us may be able to say that, oh, sure, this is the reality of the body, but due to our sort of like attachment, lust towards it, we tend to overlook it. So it's very important to be able to see the reality and then to be able to understand it, so that one can actually use it as an antidote towards the attachment and the lust towards let's say the body of a woman or a man. So this is what Nagarjuna is saying in this particular verse to King Gautamiputra.
어때서는 다 네개 책이야 범벨 메라당 되는 최고 말씀. 다 송사의 자고 부송도 안에 대 송레스. 대 송사의 범벨에 내가 이제 보기다 님이도 송션 지부진 치고스. 지단게 남박의 쇼나라니 대 하바도 범벨 메라당 되는 요 말씀. 단대게 되더보다 주주난도 가셔야 되는 송여라 범벨을 여기다 뛰는 뭐 뭐지. 다대 송사 요토는 시고스. 마세네 간데 상하나는 샤샤나. 나나는 샤샤바나 범벨 메라당이나 nga bomba yo khansa chiketa pemele meratang ina tunga kesu pula meratang tunga kesu yomar so pemele ta chim shu tsewar ma sa ani ge pemele ta ma yoro ma puchik pa tsebase ma puchik pa tsebase de petta ta bejana na yangsen sa sakal ta de ta chikten na yebe ta tsebase chod chuochi ta nga nyeng je bomba kaso tseba dido jo kore seta bejana sakal sunda de ge yende de ande pemele ma yomar pula yomar 티 베자나 양세송 그래서 안에 변면을 매랐다가 가자야 고로 버튼 더 변면을 매랐다는 것도 세죠 저번에는 말했을 때 순세 유선에 자르스 변면을 진짜가 학부 현대 양지 때왔을 때 በት. 불리는 매와다 변면을 진짜 잡았어요 맛 붙이고 잡았을 때 답변하는 뱉마 배샤서 연면 채우 나저 요스 동아 세서면 세서에다 요 초도 채우 현나시 대단한 공도 쇼바나시 나 돈에 쇼바나 변면을 매랐다가는 동아지 그랬어요. 근데 소나한테 고함을 했어요. 슈인스.
So, as you can see, that the example here has been given as a young maiden, and then you might also observe that in many of the text, you may observe that the example has been given as a young maiden. This is particularly because the text at that very moment, for example, this text was targeted towards the king Gautamiputra. If it was actually a queen Gautamiputra, then in this particular text it would have been a young sort of like a young man instead of a young maiden. So in this text, when we are given, when it's when an example or illustration of a young maiden is given, it is in no way in trying to insult or trying to look down upon a woman. In fact, in the very practice, the highest practice of Buddhism, that is the Tantrayana, it is stated that if one insults or look down upon a woman, that very moment, his entire vow that he has upheld till this point will be of no use. It will be void of every vow, and then every vow that he has taken in terms of Tantrayana will be dispelled and no longer be within him. So therefore, it is that very understanding that says that this particular illustration was targeted towards a man. If it was targeted towards a woman, then it would have been the other way around, and the example would have been a man in this case. And then another example to support this is the concept of the loving kindness, the unparalleled, unequal loving kindness of a mother towards their child. And this example is given because in Buddhism, it is believed that a sort of like a loving kindness that a mother can provide towards their offspring or child is something that cannot be equal or compared to any other form of loving kindness. So therefore, since we understand that women possess that sort of deep, profound loving kindness, which is unparalleled. These particular example also in the text by Shantideva, which is the Buddhacharya Avatara, Bodhisattvacharya Avatara. In that text also, there may be examples where in particular example of seeing the antidote towards lust and attachment, given the illustration of a young maiden. But it is because the particular text was targeted towards man at that time that these examples were given. And if it was the other way around, the examples would also flip. So therefore, it is very important to dispel that sort of like a misconception that the example of young maiden is given so to look down on women, but in reality, there is no such thing here. It's just the target, which requires that kind of sort of like vision and sort of contemplation that such illustration was needed.
되게 전에 니슈트룩죠. 니슈트룩들라 당하다 되자세야 돼. 그때 롱제바이나티 이스메요 말소. 렌자 추서는 다 자주 추도 같이 당하다 동동 동안에 추서우를 때 가다 동안에 약하고 명거서. 근데 저 가대 롱제바이나티 참셔야 돼. 참셔야다. 이스메죠 요 말소. 때 가대 롱전 다나 저 패독서. 베스트 딘데도 안디나나 백 가르쳐서나 다 제네게 제 강사 줘라. 제네 진지 강사들 다 소콜라 맞든. 제네는 되잖아 다 부디데 다 내부디데 맞든 소코 para 제네 tum도 되나 다티 명하셔야 탑실라. 네 가서는 소코데 바 멜타 왔다. 나가도 와나 거나. 멜딘데 따와나. 부디는 신나 아니 소코데 속디 책을 읽은 거. 다 디준의 책을 말데 탑람 엔 노바레소. 다 제네게 나대고 소코 참아 제네 나는 속 잡치고를 소코네 사브라나 소 담을 주되네. 멜타 와나 이제 동아 대바지. 디나셔레스. 멜타와이나 제네 코로나자 디 동안 삽사자로 써고요. 디가나 단도 멜타와이나 디게 아니 메바스에 탑라 동아 테바지 그리스.
So in the 26 words, Nagarjuna states that attachment, he says that attachment cannot be satiated. It's like the greed and attachment are like the sort of like consuming the ocean water. So we consumed water with the intention of satiating our thirst. But then when we drink the ocean water, what happens is that since it is salty, it has a lot of salt, it makes us more thirsty. And then we drink it again and again, but then there is no cessation. There's no cessation of that sort of thirst. And so similar is the illustration of someone who has the leprosy or who is a leper. So there used to be a diagnosis where when they had leprosy over a certain part of their body, they would burn it on the fire with the intention that the fire would kill that sort of like the disease or the sort of like the cause that was causing the leprosy. But in reality, what it does is that it does not only not pacify that sort of like disease, it brings up a new source of discomfort, because not only does the leprosy not stop, what happened is that the part that they have burned started to ache, started to pain. So therefore, with the intention to wanting to get rid of leprosy, what they do is that they bring on more sort of discomfort and sort of like suffering to themselves. And so this is the same example that attachment is. The more we try to feed the attachment, the greed, the more it arises. There is no way to properly fill that sort of like attachment until we say that okay, this is enough. So this is what Nagarjuna states in the 26th verse.
tanda de zenela de mela trawana de nasa de traya tapshe jo de tapshe lokpa re so ta de nangshin ge da chida bija simba yang de to de na tablan lokpa ina de wang ge ne dunga de meba so sabla dunga saba chi ta pena dunga shong meba yong che do ane mela chong ina ta dunga meba chong che do mela chong ge yor so ta dinde chong ina dunga xie ge dang de beja na xie nam de to beja na mang ba xie de dunga meba so tablan nores 되게 동화 매바 삽라 동화 사바 죽고 죽었어. 배나 동화 매바 영화 저도 몇 년을 좋아하나. 근데 동화 매바 세 파샤네 된도 동화 사바 죽고 죽었어. 동화 사바 가서는 맥스긴 거라. 대 동화 사바 죽고 죽었어. 그래서다 동화 매바 써야 돼 삼로단. 소소 삼로 나는 냠내체네. 매바 써야 마다 매라 총에다 어스 로볼 소콜라 천자 쪽에 쏘고. 근데 저기 동화 매바 써야 삽라 동화 사바 죽고 죽었어. 그래서 탑람 매바를 했었다.
So this particular example illustration where Nagarjuna gives an illustration of a leper who burns the part of his body which is infected to relieve him from the disease is a wrong diagnosis, a misconception. It is just like those sort of like thoughts when people think that, for example, jumping in the fire or hitting themselves with weapons would actually elevate their suffering, dispel the suffering. In Parmana Vartika, it is said that these kind of methods are wrong. These kind of methods are misconception. That if one has suffering, one should sit down and understand the nature of that suffering and then to look beyond and then find a solution for that, rather than jumping in fire or hitting themselves with sort of like the sword or knife or inflicting pain upon them. That inflicting pain upon oneself is not the right way of actually elevating the suffering, but rather to sit down and contemplate on its source and then analyzing on the antidotes as the methods of elevating this particular suffering.
나이나다 든저게 매봤어요. 저라 등가 매봤어요. 매나 존나 연구민도 출려 존나 연구민도 다 술을 소пол 천자선의 등가 매봤어요입니다. 등가 매봤어요. 그 탐람도 열어요 말했어. 탐람 연락 가래서는 다 등가 매봤어요. 탐람 님보 열었어. 세상 님보 아니 단다게 사제 그 니시도도 안 디가 아니 님보 검조해서다. 님보 가라서는 다 님보 대신에 되담식에 되담식 지레 응남라스 소신 일을 지와 대검조스 대단 잡아 연대 대반이 추제까지 집어 말라소스 어디게 연대 시딩 찍대 되지.
So now, as we have said, that these are wrong ways, jumping in the fire, hitting oneself with weapons, or inflicting suffering to pain and harm to oneself is not the right way to elevate from the suffering, to dispel the suffering. So one might naturally come up with the question saying that, okay, if that is the case, what is the sort of like method to uproot or to dispel the suffering? And so Nagarjuna says that there are methods of dispelling the suffering. And he says that be skilled in rightly perceiving things to understand the ultimate truth, for there is no other practice possessing comparable quality. And in this way, he states that it is only by contemplating on the antidotes to these sort of suffering or the causes of suffering that one is able to uproot them, one is able to dispel them.
다잖아 단 님보도 가서나 되담 침백에다 시럽들에서다. 시럽게 아니 된대게 되잘라서 받아 된대게 아니 녀모마다 님보가 맞대. 아니 시럽치 그래서. 그래서 다 시럽 대양 나지단 그 시럽 먹고 싶어. 된다네 아니 시럽대 되담 침백 시럽스. 되담 심어서나 똥만이 소리는 미 똥이도 배 시럽지. 돈이도 시랍되기 아니 간대지 서서나 윤내로 타셔한다 먼저 거고 차단라 내자 미라 열었어 내자 다 타셔한테 대장이나 갑돌라 색지 니도 내가 시엔데 남산 아니 곧 고쳐줘야 되는 요 말스 지난 와도 봐 용거스 다 돈이 또 봤어요 저라 돈이 또 봤으나 돈이 쓰나 간대레스 다 대선에 돈이 또 시랍되기 아니 녀모가 탐지 녀모책을 쓰고 있나 돈이 세다 칼레스 지난 양 투버처럼 실례된 거라 그래서 나 돈이 세다 지단기 뭐뭐 소소나 넬루 람딩 타서 먹고 싶어 넬루 타시원 줘라 대 돈이 이제 대도가 로줘라 시럽지 모델라 안에 돈이 또 봐서 대대베 돈이 또 로되게 도단지 멜로되게 아니 녀모가 담자 녀모치 그래서 대빵도 그래서 대다봉 뭐지 예 어쩌봐서 돈이 또 별로 안티 검네 녀모가 담자 녀모 참아 되자라 시당 소바 담자 녀모데 제도 그래서 대 남녀치 그래서
So now, since understanding the sort of like the understanding the method of elevating the suffering, one must ask what is the method, and so what is sort of like the thing that elevates oneself or uproots the causes of all suffering. And then in this, Nagarjuna says that it is the wisdom pertaining the ultimate truth, which is the emptiness, the ultimate and the most subtlest level of the nature of phenomena. This is what we understand as the ultimate truth. So one must ask, okay, so what is this ultimate truth? What is this wisdom pertaining ultimate truth? And then one comes into the understanding of the emptiness. Emptiness. So what is emptiness? One must ask. The emptiness is the subtlest level of the reality of all phenomena. It is the ultimate reality of all phenomena, how they exist, how they function, and the functionality of all these things. And when one is able to possess this wisdom pertaining ultimate truth or wisdom pertaining emptiness, one is able to uproot or dispel any sort of suffering that is caused by attachment, caused by lust, caused by hatred, caused by anger, and things caused by afflictions. So therefore, the method which uh, can be applied to uproot this suffering is to possess the wisdom pertaining ultimate truth or the wisdom pertaining emptiness.
다 언제 동반 예셔도 되는 뭐고 내로 타셔는서 그러 다 뭐고 찾아라 내로 람딩 타서 뭐뭐 다 빼셔잖아 탭도 찾잖아 탭들랑 아주 탭도 직 찾아봐야는 탭 코란라다 디 내로 담에다 먹고 싶었어 탭들은 자주 당도 미그 통대 자주지 그러나 가도다 수 가도다 입세 정도 도는 거 되네 지금 네 탭들라 아니 라고 해려고 렉자요 자주 네 제로 도가나 론용과 자주 아니 num바에 데 최초백 제주 던도된 왕봉하게 요도 주백 제주요 다된 이제 왕봉가 요도 매주백 안에 탭들라 제주 가려 요랬으면 주바지다 근데
So so every phenomena when we contemplate on those things, we understand that there are many levels of reality to that particular phenomena. For instance, if we talk about a book, we see that a book has many features. Uh, in the most obvious feature being the color, the shape, and when we touch the book, there's sort of like a touch, being rough or smooth. There, if we try to taste it, there is a taste, and then if we try to smell it, there is a smell. And so we see that all of these sort of like qualities are the qualities which can be perceived by the five senses. But now Geshe is asking the question, uh, what do you think is the quality of the quality of this particular book that goes beyond the perception of the five senses?
The way we discern things once we start analyzing.
디송소 계실라 nga cheki ngobo khan shiki ngoy ne chi chi yorang nga nelu di ma nga cheki ko ta che yong de nga cheki ha khwe ki nelu ne chu den zo changma nga cheki wangbong nga khan rung ki to yu ma yin pe nga cheki tab di ke kejo relas
뭐다다 대랑래 당한저 원봉의 제주 많이 받질라 탭들라 제주 당한저 디세 원봉을 차와줘 셔봐이나 탭들의 주버드 제주 줄 주버드 뒤에 뒤에 주버드 제주 지금 테디의 제주 딜레 디스 차와지 이전에 레팅데스
So Geshe says, yes, this is correct. Geshe says that, for example, if we think about a book and then we analyze on it upon the properties which are beyond the five senses, we understand that this book, which we are currently observing, is changing in every moment. It's changing each moment as we observe it, that it is impermanent. So that particular nature, that particular quality of the book, do you think that it is something that is beyond the perception of the five senses?
It is very subtle, like how a flower, it's how it grows. We can't make out the difference, but once we are at it, we can, I think.
코난기 가송스나 nga cheki tanda di ngobo khari na nga chu kiji la nga chu gyo troe cha de nga cheki gyaje kya nga cheki kejo na ina kejo shu chamo res nga cheki medo la so ba nga chu gyo to tro la so ba den sama nga cheki gyo to tro ki cha de kiji l gyur ma gyur la sama ta di nga chu kejo ha sa nga chu chamo relas ma do nga cheki gyaje kya ti ko tab di na tra medo de ki kejo res sons
근데 다랑레스 당한 저기 안에 지 라고죠 yes
so
Are we talking about whether or not it exists? Are you talking about the existence of the book? So without our senses, does it actually, is it there? Are you talking about whether or not things are existent?
now geshe 코난기 저 갖고 있으나 nga 저기 디고서 코난기 nga 저 다대급서 nga 저 원봉아 강로라 미템베 차기 nga 저기 탭디 네 여다 메강라 nga 저기 단다 저고 되고 오래베 가르레베스란 디트와 가리 있으라 코나 세시스나로 칠라서
나 저번에 맞은 거더니 맨날 에너지 가서서나 데 메도다 즉시해서 다 저런 식으로 다나 저래 된다 차와 메다바 차만 내던 세바이나 먼저 본본가 요트 줘 마신도 차와 쉬고 그랬어 지금 메다가 되려냐 차라 먹고 쉬어 근데 메다가 라바 쉬어도 되냐 저기 강바도 룩드를 쏘바다 리드는 룩을 쏘바던 저 아니 저거 것을 통보를 메고 먹고 근데 메다가 라바 쉬 메다가 차와서 아니 자 가자가자는 저거 저라 대한테 참아 쉬어 그랬어 근데 메다가 참아 쉬 근데 저글라 아니 심바들은 줄 적으로
no. So Keishila said that currently we're discussing on the sort of like the property of let's say the flower which was given as an illustration, that the impermanence nature of that flower, which when we talk about impermanence of a phenomena, it can be understood in many different levels. One being the sort of like the more gross level, where we see the sort of like the cracking of the house, the sort of like breaking down of the house, breaking of the bricks, falling down of the house, breaking of the walls or pillars. These are all very gross level of impermanence. But then when we try to understand this very nature of impermanence in a more subtle level, we talk about a impermanence that's happening constantly in every moment. So therefore, Geshe said that in this particular discussion, we're talking about those sort of property. And then the question that you raise about the existence of a book, sort of like the existence of a book, which is sort of independent of the five senses. He said that he will answer it later.
근데 대대도 걸 가르치거든 단단히 아주 대대를 체조 가르쳐요. 왕봉의 유도 매주베가 아니 제주 가르가 요새는 땅아도 메딱 봤어요. 제주식 그래서 우리는 신기다 제주 신바들이 가르 요래 되는 게 뒤에 되리스.
So the question Geshe posed was that, for example, the impermanence of the book is a property of the book, which is something that is beyond the gross observation of the five senses. So therefore, the question is, are there any other sort of characteristic of the book or the property of the book which is much more subtle than the gross observation of the five senses?
Can I say something? I can't find the raise hands icon. But I guess one of the things about the book would be that basically what stays with people after they read it, the knowledge they've gained or their understanding, and that seems like something that will not change. But I guess actually that can change too. The same book that was written hundreds of years ago or even 20 years ago, if a new audience is reading it in the future, or the same person, it might just reveal totally new things. So in that way also it's not permanent.
홍 갈송슬라나 nga 저기 데블라 소베 nga 저기 랍소바지 nga 저 로요 값 로베 값 되는 nga 저 시자 망부지라 그랬어. 아니 nga 저기 데라 태가 됐나 nga 저 갈삼글라나 되네 nga 저기 시자 라이팅 nga 저기 수기로나 찍바다지라 저다 nga 저기 딜 교도 메워져 저 초우레데 디 이제 nga 저기 값다 들다 nga 저 교도 그랬어. 벤차스나 로 갸다다 로 니슈 승을 티데니 nga 저 대샤베 대지 nga 저 다대지 존나로 미치기 로바이나 딜라 코와당아 저기 아니 가서 되게 되는 가서 라데 셰자디야 가서 저기 교화두고 그랬어. 딘잔 근데 사무단 디아메 다버레 샤슬라지. 아니 딘잔 가서 저기 탭디기 귤라 유베 셰자 디양 가서 저기 메다바 임바디 탭디기 캐주레 샤슬라스.
네 다라네. 다 탭디 제주다. 네 탭들 되네게 내가 줄래. 로발라 되네게 다 시작 뭐뭐래. 내좀 뭐뭐래 돼야 탭디 제주래. 다 하나래. 돼야 안에 원본가 요도 매주 버래. 됐던 말에 다 하나래. 당에 단다데 시에다 가서는 제주 뭐뭐 버째서는 다 제주 털 담배다 벌래라. 되려야 털는 동만이 있어지. 원본가 요 매주 봐. 다탭 코란 컨트리에서는 탭 세대 컨트리 탭 세는 가르에서는 딱 먼저 세서는 탭 휴구직 받고 근데 탭에서는 말했어요. 가지고 되게 뒤 잡샤르서 잡로도 거는 뒤 잡샤르서라. 얘네만 휴구직 거는 뒤 탭에서는 뒤 말했어요. 하여튼 저는 탭스는 가와요 그랬어요. 저는 탭세대 쭉쭉쭉 전에 차시 충족되는 뒤 탭에서 돼요 말했어. 탭세대다 뒤내게 파 컨트리에서는 탭세이 날에다 카드 가지고 빼드 탭시 하고 담는 거 간다 가야는 충족 받자나 내리서 저거저거 요 말했어. 그래서 안에 동반이 있었어. 랑싱 엄마데다 지랑 내 차시에 충족되는 데 탭 엄마 데지라다 쓰는 저거저 돼요 말했어. 근데 제가도 메인날에 다 카드 가리나데 충족 받더니 데데레다 쓰는 저거저요 말했어. 되나시다 데 안에 카포에 데 안에 시랍데라 안에 시랍 타르토 같아. 뭐변에서 다 타타션데 데레서. 동반이 있어. 롤업 도저래다.
So, yes, this is a perfect illustration of the sort of property of the book being beyond the gross observation of the five senses. And similarly, one would come, so for example, in the more grosser level, one will talk about all the gross observation of the five senses, saying that the book has this shape, this color, oh, it tastes like this, it smells like this, it feels like this when you touch it. But then when you go into a more subtle inquiry, you'll understand that, oh, this very book here is constantly changing, that the impermanent nature of this book is making it change constantly. So we understand the property which goes beyond the gross observation of the five senses. And then we go beyond that. And then at the end, the ultimate truth of that book, we come across the understanding of the emptiness. We see that, oh, this book that I have, if I take out one page out of it, and if I say, oh, is this page the book? We'll come to the conclusion that this page is not the book. And then if we take out the back cover, we'll say, oh, it's the back cover. That's not the book. And now when we when we sort of take away all pages, and then we break it down into individual pages, and then leave it at one place. Now, when we say, okay, now where is the book? We see that in the most subtle level, when we go and try to point out at a particular thing and say that this is book, there isn't anything there. And so this is what emptiness is. It tells us that when we go into the inquiry of the sort of like the constituent of any phenomena, ultimately we see that there isn't an absolute existence which is intrinsically existing, which is independently and intrinsically existing, independent of the factors that it arise from. We see that there isn't any absolute phenomena to which indivisible, absolute, independent phenomena that we point a finger and we say, oh, here is the book. And so this particular level of truth is known as the ultimate truth, the most subtlest level. And then when one arises wisdom pertaining this ultimate truth, that becomes the wisdom that uproots all the causes of suffering.
Okay, Tanda. Dipiji, you want to say something? Dipti, yeah, Dipti.
Yes. Yeah, this is very interesting. So, I'm enjoying the discussion, but I'm just wondering, in making that analysis, the thought of sort of space time keeps coming up for me. So I feel, you know, experience obviously can be broken up into, smaller divisions, which, we can sort of, every experience might be different, but, in a different time, in a different space. Are we, the concept of emptiness is sort of going beyond form, feeling, all of the senses, is it not? And then, say, taking that book in the, in a wider time frame, that book was a tree, and then can we sort of say that that book also therefore has Buddha nature as its essence? I mean, I think that's whole. Sorry, I don't want to try and talk about emptiness because I've just started middle way teachings and I've realized that it's a really brilliant subject, but it's going to take a long time for me to get my head around. But maybe you can say something about space-time in the concept, in the context of all of this.
Lesson Geshe Korangi Karasonslana, then digging to Nelu Todu di Geshe La, and to matching the Tama de Langatsugi, Benchashna Kogi, and to Ducheging Atsugi, come the Zona dying the Tama de Langatsugi, Panangi Chachidang, Bongchaji, Dona Panangi Chachidang Atsugi, and the Tugi Chachi Ligados. Tabla soba in a Koran, Tab de la Nyongkengi Kansachigi, Tab Chibaji is no Kola Nyongwegi, Tenanga Tsugi. 콜 두카가 지요로스 미 로가지기 두저 로가질 콜 용어 지요로스 나저 타둔 섬단나 탭 코라랑기 둘라다스나 코 두즈지라 콩아 저기 신동진의 맛고치 제정아 저 신동들랑아 저기 지 탱게 제진 지경아 저기 콜라 겐테정아 저기 코 탭진랑 파트르 바스나 저 덴데지라스나가 저 탭딜라양아 저 타두스나가 저기 디 상계기 컴 대신님 보딩아 저 열에 베스나 다디 트와드 송고도 와코랑기 아니 갈라스나 코란 땅아 저기 단다 우마디 롭센디 단당아 저 정준 체정아 저기 슈 교령부 마도드 동번이가 슈지 코란 시에와랑아 저 뽑아다 딩저지 당금면 도 스텐자 슈싱메스 이양아 저기 오보 강시 용의 태도 샤드 대경아 저기 오보기 내세기 바르나 동차기 차지다 아니 코란 용ken기 강사들라 뜨뱅아 저 뒤기 차디샤드 덴제기 두다 남카 판랑기 차라 뜨제 nga chigi tongni ki kowa chi nga zu ten thugu re besla chi ta di thwa re sha
Tanda di Kurang di tuida nanga sayda quantum physics ke jato dawo shekdo. Tadi choji da dawo yoris. Ta nganzo ge di tongpanyi sejora. Ani tongpanyi shedo zane tanda ge tep di Kurang gyuto ne tiba zai jeba ina Kurang lawa na je ya tep diba ina kanda kanda mna di chi. 行动着那行动在呀贴着那看那别的嘛的的사실 리부터는 그 geology 때 쇼네 나 배트 거랑 디 셀러다 테스트 animal cell 다 딘데 그 fishing cell 저라 딘데네 마 라용 거다 야 테도 바이나 데 덴바레 다라는스 동반이 셔도 되는다 지난 그 뒤다 난가서 이제 띠트랑 되고 말스 띠랑 따다 되고 말스 동반이 셔도 뭐부터 거랑 동반이 배 동반도 약간 매በት 그 말스 저 제바이나 딘데 레스 직대 요저를 디 매봤선다 아니 동반이 있어 tiene pa de xiao ma do le pa sam le shu ne de te bre se pa ta xiao ma do ge chun chun zhe ne de nie me wa song da ani dong ba ni re se wo se za de jia ne te la kam de xin mo yo re se do da kam de xin mo se de da ani song me ge da song me ma ga sem de ma yin be ge da ani sok da ka ze do da ani te da wo den zhe le yo ma re se de ne zhe
So Geshe said, your inquiry here, when you talk about the space and time, it more or less inclines towards the understanding of the sort of the revelations of the more contemporary physics, that is the modern quantum mechanics, and those are very interesting ideas according to Geshe. But and then the example that you have given, like the book, at certain time it was a tree. So Geshe said that definitely, if we tend to sort of like rewind and sort of follow the path in looking from where this particular book has arisen from and its constituent, we go to the tree, then that very tree comes from the clump of tissues, and the tissue comes from the clump of cells, and then it goes beyond. But then the question here, when we talk about emptiness, is beyond that particular existence. Though it should be understood that emptiness never talks about the concept of nihilism, where we say that everything is void of existence, that there exists nothing, and then everything that exists is a mere sort of like an illusion. That's not the concept of emptiness. The emptiness tells us that when we contemplate on the true nature of things, and when we analyze that the things cannot arise without dependence upon sort of the factors, and that everything that we have in existence is due to the mere imputation of our concept or mind. That gives us the understanding that everything exists dependent, and then there is nothing that exists intrinsically independent of causes and imputations of mind. And when we think about that kind of analysis, and when we go deeper into that inquiry, is where we arise this understanding that everything is empty of intrinsic nature, and this is where the emptiness comes into play. So and then the question about the Buddha nature, Geshe said that anything that is non-sentient, so given the condition that the book doesn't have a consciousness, or anything that is non-sentient, doesn't have consciousness, cannot arise a Buddha nature. Any phenomena, regardless if it has a consciousness or it is sentient, it has a Buddha nature.
그래서 안당어도 먼저 해서라 다다나 주버지도 주버 니니 잡제데 지부 렉수 퇴다 내 남장스 시단 처럼 제가 부르마라스 대다 간다 연대 디니데 되네 연대 시나 태양 추스 어디가서 안에 만도 되베 안에 시럽 되담도베 시럽단 수렴니다 덴바데 안에 먼저기 그룹에 요레스 된 것.
So the verse 28 is Nagarjuna states, even person possessing high caste, beautiful form, and learning is not respective if he lacks wisdom and morality. However, one who possesses these two qualities, even though lacking the other qualities, is worshipped. In this particular verse, Nagarjuna talks about the importance of the wisdom which is the wisdom pertaining emptiness, and the morality. So therefore, in this verse, Nagarjuna is praising the wisdom pertaining emptiness, and the morality.
단다다 되게 가서나 시럽다 아니 양다보다 많이 봐 넘버 집에 시럽다 주름다 맞된 바이나 속고 가자 요나 속고 지고 이도 홍와 가자 요바 있나요? 아니 디네도 저랬어. 내 맛에 켜버려서 망도 쳐봐서 나 켜왕 시골에서 뺏고 켜버려. 디데 탭들이 짬여서 속바다 디데 싱글스 디데 깨다 싶어 요바 있나. 나 디데 출임 대 양다 많이 배 싫었다. 아니 출임 몇 번이나 아니 디 그거 요 말했어. 저도 양다보다 많이 배 싫었을 때 가장 개죠 봤어. 가서는 뭐 내도 가다 간 인바다 많이 받이 넘버 집에 싫었다 몇 번이나 근데 거기 태영어 맛도 또 말. 태영어 맛도 와이나 아니 몽방만 들어대겠어. 몽방만 들어와는 너도 용해 임버스. 디직제 아니 수림 사이도 수림데 몇 번이나 답에 아니 가주면 해야 되겠다. 다 영화 예수 고란 가르 삼자 천자 장마 해야 되겠어. 저선 삼자 천자 장마 해도 되네. 아니 거기 소설에 강한 책에 아니 신뢰 강한 수에 임버라. 그래서 수림 세든지 아니 룡하게 줘봐 양다 봤던 봐. 근데 그 돈배 싫으면 칸에 칸 좀만 좀 납대. 뒤진전에 좀 먹을래. 근데 생각 안 돼. 나다. 아니 르다. 아니 소소 갔다 가는다. 누가 예수 믿었다. 되게 좁아대. 야고 맞담 되잖아. 아니 삼자인데 상마 쳐야 되라. 대체에 전제는 소소는 쇼도는 좀 되었어요. 쇼도는 많이 봐야나다. 소소 강한 남 수행이 버다. 내 조실라이 버. 그래서 나도 니들 되나. 근데 제가 미디 시럽 되는 니들 대배가 아니 속상보여 날에 아니 개방이 날에 아니 저도 그게 요 말했어. 저거 도도.
So here Nagarjuna says that the importance of the wisdom that pertains to the discernment between the one that should the sort of like the conduct that should be adopted and the conduct that should be abandoned, and the morality that conducts one's body, speech, and mind. So, for instance, there may be a great scholar who has published, let's say, thousands of books, a lot of books, and then he is renowned throughout the land as a very learned person. But then, if that scholar does not possess the wisdom that pertains to the discernment between the conduct which should be adopted and the conduct which should be abandoned, and the morality that conducts one's body, speech, and mind, that particular scholar will not be valued as someone as to be someone that is a saint or someone that is a great scholar. Because when one doesn't possess that kind of wisdom, one is just driven by the ignorance, and whatever they do, they're unable to discern between the reality and the exaggeration of the mind, thus inclining their actions towards their most basic sort of desires. And then similarly, if one does not conduct themselves properly through the concept of morality, one will not be able to keep their body, mind, and speech in check. And therefore, as they will think of doing something, their body, speech, and mind will follow suit. And therefore, they will do things that they will regret later. For example, like if they cannot conduct their sort of like the speech well, they will say things that they will regret later. And so therefore here Nagarjuna states the importance of these two, the wisdom that discerns between the reality and the delusion, and the morality that conducts one's body, speech, and mind, so that those who possess these quality, even though they may not possess the other qualities, are revered and held as the highest in all of the society, whereas those who may possess a beautiful form, who may be born in a high caste, who may be very well learned, but do not possess these two qualities, will not be considered to be a great person.
하더네 니슈 적고들. 니슈 적고데 들이다 적된 취지에서 일단 남녀가도 시험. 적된 취지에서라도 적된 침배 니다 미니다. 대다 메테 니다 미니다. 대다 매지 적된 취지에보 다게 유명바 고념제스. 다 실행 세트들이시.
So the verse 29 is Nagarjuna is telling how to remain indifferent in the 8 worldly dharmas. He states, O knower of the world, the 8 worldly dharmas, gain, loss, happiness, unhappiness, sweet words, harsh words, praise, and blame should be regarded equally, as they are not worthy of your mind.
다데 가서나 남주에 안에 가족에 디왕도 저대고 다 제대로 취재했어. 망장은 저게 남지게 롱아지 저봐 망고제 다 제대로 취재 왕도 저 그랬어. 제대로 취재는 당한데 제대로 취재다 가서나 네 베나 니바다 미니바스나 니 저거다. 니바스나 놀라 속바다 아니 가래나지 니바이나 가테블람상 가능 쇼체. 마니바이나 남상 놀라 속바다 마니나 셈 맞지워차. 니 중서 this devato this kawato devato this 남상 가다 최대 this 동아순나 배 셈 맞지워서 배 대된 거죠. 대화다 메테버체 님바세다 땀 님바다 그때 님보지 저런 걸 하고 싶어 시에도서는 배때다 동화도 당나서 님보도 못하나 가다 최대 님보 다 님보지 통나 님바다 어디데 땀 님바도 못하나 가다 최땀님 많이 봐지 되는 남사 맞지버체 어디데 뭐 되고라 에테는 담아되나 에네 동화다나 가다 최 메라티 따나 배트 두다 최대 저러 당한도 대원도 되고 딱 해서 지난 대화는 동화다나 그 야드레스요 뭐라 동화다나 다 하나 소소네 ranking 가인 바디 미직니직 동화다나 야 털어줘요 말 메라당에는 마사줘요 말 오만 오늘 주잖아 내가 저기 다디 에 오늘 저 털어 덧바도 벗on다 동화다나 까다 쳐다 메라티다나 뚝다 주스 마지 바자 안 콘돌라 담면에 전에 다래 저어서 발내려서 내서 뭐 용도로 됐는데 대저대대 가서는 먼저 제대 처리하고 원도 되고
So we usually conduct ourselves in the inclination towards the 8 worldly dharmas. So you can notice here that these 8 worldly dharmas come as a couple. The first one is gain, the second one is loss. So when we say gain, it means that, for example, when we do something and then when we gain something out of it, we feel a great deal of satisfaction, a great deal of joy. And then similarly, when we do something, but then when we don't gain anything, we feel there is a great sense of loss. We feel saddened by this. A great sadness comes over us. Similarly, if when we are sort of like happy, a little bit happy, we feel very excited about things. We are always excited. We're always happy. But then when a sort of like a small sorrow comes in our life, then we become a sort of like unhappy, depressed. We're no longer excited. And then similarly, we see that when someone speaks sweet words to us, say good things to us, good things about us, we feel very happy and excited in our hearts. But then at the same time, when someone just speaks one harsh word towards us, we automatically become sort of like sad and sometimes angry, agitated, irritated. And then when someone praises us, we become proud, and we become happy. And then we feel very happy. But then at the same time, when someone blames us, we become sad, disappointed, we become irritated. So therefore, Nagarjuna says that all of these doesn't have sort of like an essence, and that there is no sort of like essence in being happy when someone praises you, because when someone praises us, it doesn't make us a bigger person. At the same time, when someone insults us, it doesn't make us a smaller person. It is only due to the exaggeration of our own mind that the sort of power that we give to these things, that they're able to control the way we live and the way we think. But in reality, all of these have no essence at all.
저는 당한 저기 제대 취재 왕도 만들어야 탑시 제는 배진도 알아 뒤에 된 취재 세트래샤 내가 저는 고야 레민도 근데 저기 봐야 레샤 something 섬로 당하니나 근데 섬로 양생한테 셈다는 녀대바이나 남자주도 미치게 저랑 대화 당하니나 근데 메시지 가요 말 나도 메라 치고 당하니나 셈다는 방마지가 잘라 속았다 근데 주는 연구 말 그래서 제대 취재 왕도 만들어 가지고 있나 그래서 메대 나온 거란다 근데 메대 봐 톡트리스 바꿨어 근데 강한 갈라간도 용도 없어. 내가 저에다는 응마한테 별로 나한테 게시 배군자서도 그런 담보는 지켜다 딩은 거는 적박 갖다지 뭐 쇼제 시수안에 갖다 몇 게시들에 돈을 그러나네 초반 냠내 쇼쳤다. 초반 냠내 쇼쳐야 되는 그런 것부터 갖다 몇 게시에다 배 냠내 쇼쳐야 되는 미뭐 뭐지 쇼쇼가 쩌도. 내가 그런 대 저부지를 쇼서 남지. 다 남주인에다 연접 대표 다 하나 시작하면 미사가 다 찍고 뭐 니마지 다디 미랑 미망부터 다야나 미대 전부터 근데 가질려고 있어라 labde deni mata ba tangbo tete shoja da ba zangma do suen ba indo ko sue to 근데 막 장마 쇠리 야 때도 마 데서도 삼단 nga namgyo di machiwa tiren tine chiya songs, karsina chiya re, somda dine, ta chilo na midine le kora, ta kunzo yu chik ayabu tangma tuksa na kanang chiya sam, tindegi jikden chu chiya wangdo chowa chis, sambal namsa di tenshie do korni, namsa kola pala shuris, jikden chu chiya kala tala shuris, jo zang tiri shubar tuk shuris, pala shuris chore, namgyo tangi sha char. Te sonza na chuba nyamle chenga dine, ta jikden chu chiya wangdo dhugumba wade hakone, namgyo di, 다 제대로 주제 칼라 탈라 쉬어서 다 때내 생각 제대로 주제 칸 왕도 만들어 봐야나 되더라고 차고 있어. nemlesena.
So, so every day, usually we should practice to identify these eight holy dharmas whenever we are doing something, be it practice or be it anything in our life, to identify that something that we are doing is either being inclined towards the eighth holy dharma or not. And if one understand that something that they're doing in this very moment is being influenced by the eight worldly dharma, one should renounce it, one should denounce it, one should say, I should not go towards this. So, for instance, many years ago, earlier in Tibet, many years ago, there was a Tibetan scholar, Geshe Lobsang, who in the beginning was a bandit. He was a bandit, but later he became a Geshe, and then he became a Kadamba Geshe, a great practitioner, known throughout the Tibet as one of the great practitioner. So when he became a practitioner, and when he sort of like steered his, like when he started practicing, he became renowned throughout the land, and many people came to him to take guidance, to seek teachings. And then one day, certain sort of like nobility of that particular land was paying him a visit. And from that very morning, what he did is that he cleaned his sort of like the place that his residence. He wiped the furnitures, making it sparkly shine, and then he cleaned his courtyard and everything. But then suddenly he thought, usually people come to meet me, but then I never do these kind of things. Why am I doing it today? And then when he contemplated on it, he understood that whatever he did today was being influenced by the eight worldly dharmas. And then when he thought about it, he had a great guilt, and then he started confessing it. And then afterwards, what he did is that he took a handful of dust and then he sprinkled on the places that he cleaned earlier. And he said, "Oh, eight worldly dharmas, I throw this dust upon you. I do not require you." And then he threw it on those places that he had cleaned. So just like this, it is important in our day-to-day life to identify the sort of like the actions that we are doing, or whether these actions that we think are profound are being influenced by the eight worldly dharmas. And if we understand that it is, in fact, being influenced by the eight worldly dharmas, we should abandon them and try to renounce from these actions.
많다 되지. 단다 안에 중립을 당하지. 중립을 되고 뽕 그저 삼바서. 다들라네 쇼로가 니도 숨주다 숨주 소진이 다 당보데 저제 잠서 결론 파다니스. 전담 여병 세다 좀 못다스. 코질레도 디바 미지데 냐웬네메께도 까매지스. 디베레는 제바 가냐니스. 에메라 천천 메저장스. 집에 둘러 밤나 디바이 나제트부 칸라 옴버추루스 다 시딩 직접 니도스.
So the two verses by Nagarjuna: do not commit sins for the sake of Brahmans, bhikshus, gods, guests, parents, sons, queen, or attendants, because there is not anyone to share the result of hell. Though those who perform sinful deeds will not be immediately cut like by a weapon, still, when the time of death comes, whatever be the result of the karma will become manifest.
다 당보디 가서는 잡아주는 게다 안에 잠세다. 나는 계정 하다. 네 제 여비움다 세다 좀 된저게 된다는 디바체요 말했어. Tenzo tenzo dikpa chaba na gyurang ge ane dunga nyong go resi. Tenzo chedo nga dikpa chayi ane nga dunga nyong me de miksa dina yo marisi. Dikpa che soso chaba de chetan suyo do chaba ina soso ding nga me de dunga nyong go ba de ane de kase tenke ba chare. Dila ane miksa dina yo marisi. Teson ane jabo gyurang ge tenzo chedo ane dikpa chaba nina che yo marisi.
So in the third verse 30, Nagarjuna states that, O King Gautamiputra, do not commit sins, be it for the sake of a Brahman, a bhikshu, a god, a guest, parents, sons, queen, or attendant, because at the end, when you need to experience the result of the product of these sins, you would not be given a special treatment. You will not be given a sort of special pardon saying that I have committed this for a Brahmin, I have committed this for a bhikshu, I've committed this for a god or a guest or a parent or a queen. You will face that very result of the sin that you have committed, and then there will be no one to share that result of hell, none of the ones for whom you have committed this sin. So therefore Nagarjuna says, O King Gautamiputra, do not commit sins, be it for anyone.
나 단단히바 되게 가서나 다 디벨레 잡아이나 lakwala ane chunjaki lakwa tuwa na jingi tunga kato yoyo maras. Ena soso dadi kato nga sokora shiwa na shigal kapsu. Ane shiba kapsu ane soso ki tunga tikpa la chaba ta tene ane samna gyoba jene ma jiwa shiwa chagaras. Diya yungaras. De masa ane tikpa sawa na di debu di le junde se de ane di milu wa yinba sonza. Tikpa debu di ane tunga nyungu ba di ane setili ma nyunga tsechimara yungaras. 그래서 난 먼저 세딜라네 저저 되나래 향이 되나 디버전에 맞아 봐서 개발상장 사대바이나 소저 안에 시바 가서 있느냐 소소소라 제소이랑 체 라바도 저기 신이 시고 당도 상마 마시바 소제 대통마 대안에 시고 좀될 때는 신나 지역에서요 말스 내가 저랑 신도래 제제 그래 시시에 데이터 정말이다 내가 저랑 신을 시고에다 되니까요 말 나 가르쳐 와서는 집에 가서 안에 저와 먹지 같이 해줘랬어 lakwa nga zo so ge ane kom jawa ina re khando chewa ina mane tanga khare chewa ina de nimba takwa che chewa ina shiwe ko nga lo dene tipa to dine ji mane dine sa yin sane shiga la so jesu yana che so yeme che gyoba june me sam sam ta kanja ma do do che ban tiba ma jawa gyoba jine chewa na shiwe ka so yan so gyoba ma 좀 그랬어 어디 가서 그 chewa de ne so lakwa la yore che tumna ya ko shi ores.
So in the verse 31, Nagarjuna says that when one performs a sinful deed, it is not like a weapon in one's hand where one can immediately cut it off. It cannot be cut like will not be immediately cut like a weapon. But then when the time of death comes, we know that the sinful deed will manifest its result. And so there will be sadness, there will be fear and terror. And since we know that the karma is something that is something which is evident to fall upon the one who has sort of like done the action, the result will come, and it is non-deviating from the fact. One will suffer what they have what they have initiated, and so we should also understand that death is the nature of life, that everyone that is born eventually dies, and then there is no need for fear. But then to be fearless during the death, one should understand that to die without a regret, one should uphold oneself, conduct oneself in that particular manner, to not commit sins. For example, if someone if someone recites the mantra of Avalokiteshvara throughout their lifetime, during the time of death, instead of thinking about the fear of death, they will contemplate on the number of mantras that they have recited and the sort of like the merits that they have accumulated. Thus, at the time of death, it would be a peaceful one. So therefore, here it states that to live a life without regret, without fear, one should not commit any sins. Rather, to conduct themselves in a more heedful actions, wholesome actions.
다른데 숨주 소니 대한 박반 노드에 배바세 되지. 대단 수림 동도 되거든. 제매 모자 시다 트유당스. 실업 노드 라고 투베 송스. 너시 펜베 마도 마치수. 너시 페와 도모 도시수. 사다디 박반 노드에서 시다 시디는 박반 노드에서.
So the verse 32 is the verse in which Nagarjuna talks about acquiring the wealth, the seven wealth of the Arya or the noble being or the holy ones. So Nagarjuna states, the sage said that faith, morality, giving, hearing, uncontaminated modesty, and humility and wisdom are the seven wealth. Recognize other ordinary wealth to be meaningless.
그러니까 내가 당보대 안에 대발라도 렌저를 이 집에 대봤어. 디양 계속 붙여. 렌저를 이 집에 대바도 몇 번이나 가르치고서나 레 디사와나 저부디 용거였어. 레 야고사나 저부 야고 용다. 레 응바사나 저부 동아 용에 딘데게 예제 저부지 몇 번이나 아니 다 두고 전에 캡사인 있어. 밀고 고고다나 캡사인 작전시나 캡사인 딘데게 답에 미세나 캡사인 제나 캡사인 있으면 som도 명 그래. 됐어. 안에 렌더를 이 집에 대바도 여봐이나 다 그것도 약간 메르 배줄래냐 그래서 마세 소소 게를리나 몽벌 동안 용 그래서 아니 미세바이나래 다가나 지가 아니 그것도 아니나 유주셔 봐또 카라 저바이나 다디 렌더에서 이 집에 대바도나 전설을 좀 쓰치었어 그래서 나는 렌더를 이 집에 대바서 법에 놓드나 직들로
So out of the seventh belt of the Aryas, the first is faith. And when we talk about faith, we're talking about the faith in causality, that if one commits an unwholesome deed, it will be met with suffering. And if one does a wholesome action, it will be met with happiness. It is one of the most important wealth, the faith in causality, because if one doesn't have that faith, one will think that, oh, if I kill someone, if I deceive someone, if I make sure that I gain great profit from someone by lying to them, to deceive, by using deceit and to use deception and to deceive them, it is sort of like a gain for me. And therefore, they will be inclined to doing these things again and again. But in reality, the law of causality, as it stands, is that these actions are unwholesome and these will eventually lead to suffering. So therefore, the first one out of the seven wealth, the faith in causality, is a very important wealth.
렌 이버테 수름데도 그래서 캔라마 수름 다 수름다 지다 그다음 것도 막 그러니 다 수름세데 매바이나 메디 누가 줘봐 간요마 주시는 되게 강도 슈바나시레 룽아 줘봐도 안에 소소 가르쳐 봐 난신 야간에 도가 주네 레진 이와 맞이베도 가좀 저 룽아 줘봐 시간에 도바이나 근데 소소이나 동안 용 그래 맞아야네 시간에 동화 수액 쫓아 그래 그래서 난 룽아 줘봐도 약고 쓴 거야 되네 그래서 뭐 그렇지 수름스
So the second wealth is morality. We've already discussed this a lot about this in the previous sessions. So one should have morality in their life, because without morality, one cannot conduct themselves properly. Through morality, they can conduct their body, speech, and mind. Without them, they will not be able to conduct themselves properly, giving in to their most basic sort of thoughts and then doing things as they wish. And then when one does anything that comes to their mind, especially inclined by the afflictions, uh, they themselves cause suffering to themselves, as well as become the cause of suffering for the people around them. So therefore, it is very important to have the wealth of morality.
지당 수림세들 지당 망고시오다 장마시오주는 망고시오르스베나 그 소다라 수림세요 수림세를 써봐 창조세배 수림을 써봐다 다 지당 게 전에 저 메가 주봉 수림을 써봐다 망고시오주르다 수림디 최도는 제가 당한 저기 기왕아마도 지마에 되게 밀루터베 저번에 수림세 되니 기와 야갈래 원도 컴바터베는 수림세 되니 쇼도 좀 있었다. 원도 이제 수렴내시 메서다. 수렴대에 원도 투별, 원도 타다미 고마 투별하니 수렴성에 대 개점 쇼인 속다. 딱 그래서도 안에 돈 받아가다서 소소하게 돈 받는 데 매바 있나요? 룡아 좁아대 소소랑 됨 수매줘라 소소랑 됨 수매 룡아 좁아 약고 채고에 대한 개체 뭐 쉬어 버렸어 다 돈바켈랑 있는 돈바송에 하나 개체 뭐라 돈바데 미사 개켈랑 매바이나 소소를 룡아 좁아 약고 채대 근데 개체 뭐 채버려 대체반은 소소 최도는 세바나 제바체 마도나 안에 밀려서 하달리 텐데 공도 고마 토일 소보다 미신바게 소절라 닝고 90셀라 소보다 가리네 제바시보다데 어때서 나 추림세 들리 도도도 제와서는 다 터졌단 말아
So if we discuss in much more deeper on the morality, we will not have enough time to discuss on this, as it is stated that morality is the foundation of higher rebirth. Morality encapsulates different vows: the vow for self-liberation, the vow of the Tantrayana or the Vajrayana vows, the vow of abandoning the 10 unwholesome deeds. So all of these vows constitutes a morality, and so it is said that the vow that the morality is the basis. So there is no other greater force in acquiring a higher rebirth as the morality. As said by Chandrakirti, so it states that when one desires to have a higher rebirth, to manifest a higher rebirth as a human, as a god, one should be heedful towards the practice of morality. And then when we say morality, it need not be the vows, the Tantrayana or the Vajrayana vows. It need not be the Bodhisattva vows. One can conduct themselves properly, adequately in a society so that they would be in harmony with everyone they live with. And in that way, they can ascertain a higher rebirth or a rebirth as a human in the next lifetime. And in this very lifetime, they will acquire the respect and the compassion of other people that they live in the vicinity. So this is a brief about morality. And if we go in even deeper, we won't have enough time.
나 되제 안에 동화래다 짐바세 짐바데 안에 짐바게 되고다 론조 용도다 론 되게 되고는 시와이나 짐베 되고 론조 충분해서 사실 안에 야 짐바단 가서 론조를 믿네 짐바단 아니나 따다 되고 말았어 레나 레바메베 짐바세 데이터는 같은 용글 삼상에 삼로 메베토네 수수 가제 땅이나 짐바 가제 땅이나 데이터 샤바이나 수수 짐바데 양다 같이 그랬어 근데 되고데 란싱을 용글했어 근데 되고 용하나 등급 끌어온 다시 걸어 즉 총삼상에 지금 레바테네 자고요 말스 집에다는 그 대부 논조들은 신 용거스 즉 대전에 진에 데이터는 데이터를 다른 것도 데이터까지 매체에는 스르신의 집에다는 배조들 편도라 배조 편바이나 소소소는 신 사도
So the third wealth is the wealth of giving. So it is said that giving begets fortune, but that doesn't mean that one should do the action of giving to someone with the expectation of receiving something back. It is said that the practice of giving should be without any expectation from others. But the result of the giving, which is the fortune, will arise spontaneously, as it is the result of the practice of giving. It will arise spontaneously. And then when someone has the intention of benefiting someone else, and with that intention, if they do the action of giving, this is the most proper action or the most proper practice of giving.
네다 심바데 쳐봤으더라도 담배 취해도 쳐봐 세상에 쳐봤어야 돼 당은 이 시험냠내 저와는 안에 쳐봤어야 돼 계속 무섭죠 내도 양다보다는 양다보 많이 봐 뭐지 쳐봤더니 되는 간데 이미 야고 삼로다네 아니 냠내식으로 그래서 나 쳐봤기는 매바이나 냠내셔야 되는 검제라 써보더니 영해요 그래서 안에 쳐봤어야 돼 계속 무서워 그 상님만 먼저 먹고 당번에 쭉 가서 쳐봐 계속 먹거든요 맞다 슈사를 대선도 안에 쳐봤어야 돼 아니 파파나 되는 지그래죠
So the fourth wealth is the wealth of hearing. The wealth of hearing and accumulating knowledge by listening to the precious teachings. By listening to these teachings, to be able to acquire the wisdom to discern between what is proper, what is improper, what is to be adopted, what is to be abandoned. So that by these practice, one is able to accumulate the sort of the wisdom and the knowledge, So therefore, we have already said this in the beginning of our sessions. We have discussed about this in the previous sessions about the importance of hearing and observing the teachings.
드네다 데 ngoza teyo sedala ngoza sewada teyo sed khazana ngoza sewa rangyo de de ngoza sewa jikpa ro de yede rangyo de cheba na ngoza sewa da shen de chana teyo soda nga di cheba ina ati rig ma song samsang so 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 좀zer chana nga di chana nga di tunga nyong gre so so nga di chana pege hakon chek sang gre samila sokwa sudo 좀zer de nga di tsamba jora 아니 내가 또가 셔를 semse chede rangyo de chana tsamba de na ngoza ngoza시 아니 시 존재를 되는게 semse chebate 아니 최여서 엉가데 저는 비 하고 그랬어 맞아 매일이 직상 그랬으면서 밑적도 뺏었잖아 적중시에 그거다 좀제 시 좀제 그래서 내가 그거다 놓고 동안 용 그래 아 야고 메리 메신바 하고나 야고 메리 쓰면 뭐 딘데를 쏘고 시 좀제 되는게 아니 내가 또가 제라 semse chede sam로 되라 아니 최여서 뭐자 최여서
So the fifth wealth is uncontaminated modesty, to be humble. So this particular practice could be done with the target as self. When one refrain oneself from doing sort of an unwholesome action, saying that, oh, it is not good, and the sort of the target being self, in that case, it becomes sort of like the sort of like being embarrassed in doing that action. But when one takes the target as someone else, saying that, oh, if I do this, it will not, it will cause that person suffering, pain, and all of these things, and therefore I should not do this. If one does it in that way, then this becomes the sort of like the action of modesty, action of modesty with the concern and the hesitance. It becomes more of like the action due to the hesitance of doing the action. So therefore, this practice of this wealth of uncontaminated modesty comes from two perception or aspect. The first being targeted towards self, which is due to embarrassment, and the second being due to the concern for others, which becomes the hesitance, and because of which one acquires the uncontaminated modesty.
저는 당원도 ngoza teyo samlo de mewa ina to midi da 내가 도가 제일 semse mewa 어떤 소설을 가지고는 좀 삼아 메시아를 가sam나 삼삼도 속고 근데 그 삼을 그대와이나 따때 렌다 사바 쇼세네 강한 뭐 쇼수 소소이나 강한 시절이 아니 신뢰 강한 수 이봐라 어디서 당 ngoza teyo 돼 남자 견도 어떤 때 그때 같이 뭐 쇼랬어
If one does not have the embarrassment of doing something unwholesome, as well as if one is not hesitant and doesn't have the conscience to think about others while doing an unwholesome action, then they will become sort of like indifferent towards the unwholesome action, and they will commit numerous amount of sins and unwholesome actions, regardless of anything, because they neither feel embarrassed nor they are hesitant to cause trouble for others. And so, if one does not have those qualities, it brings a lot of suffering to self and others.
탐만데를 실업되다 실업자한테 렌년 넘버 줘 렌년 넘버 집에 실업돼 메와이나 내가 저기 냠레치에나 냠레치 단신 거 내가 지에나 디 제단 신배 실업돼 메와이나 이거 소소게 삼만에 연구 말 그래서 나 실업세 때 같이 마셔줘 대신 강도 쉬고나 실에다 탐마데 실업세 때니 땅은 저기 믹나시래 소라 원봉에 난나게 믹도 메와이나 가지고 강하다 요 어쨌든 실업세 때 믹나시 무슨다디 아니 같이 버려서 그래서 나도 뒤라 안에 파고 넣을 수 있었다 노릇 지단계 가도 세던 걸로 소바 가자 요바나 텔레 학바가 아니 단자게 넣던데 안에 세던 거 소바게 뭐 던전에 던들 하가랬어 파고 넣던 어디네 도저래다
So, the last of the seven wealth of the Arya is the wisdom. So, like we have already discussed in previous sessions, as well as previously in this lesson, we understood the importance of wisdom. As we have discussed that out of all the six perfections, the wisdom is like the eye. Without it, without the wisdom, we cannot direct the practice of the six perfections or the paramitas in the attainment of enlightenment. So therefore, wisdom is the most important. Is one of the seven wealth, and very important indeed. So these seven wealth of the Aryas are incomparably more precious than any sort of gold or silver or any sort of precious gem that could be acquired in this world. And so one should understand this in this way. And Nagarjuna also emphasizes greatly in this particular verse that that is the case.
이제 다든다 바제 저저도 좋아해서들이 저거도 되는 중요한 사실.
So it seems that we have already come to the time to end this session. So if anyone has questions regarding today's session, Geshe is asking, please ask away.
Anyone, any question? Okay, if not, Gisela, I have one question. May I? I hope we have time. Or we have crossed the time. I can ask Gisela?
Yeah, one question is okay.
One. Okay. My question is regarding the 8 worldly concerns, like the gain, loss, happiness, unhappiness, all these things, Geshe-la, but in our day-to-day life, we do feel these emotions. So it is not so easy, especially for our very close people in a day-to-day life. So how to create the gap instead of just reacting on understanding? I find it very difficult. I'm not sure about others.
라서 계실라 코란기 트와 카레실라나 nga tsuki tangi jigden chöge nga zo nyeba la sobe jigden chöge de ngochyo go de kechenbo re songso wa 계실라 코란기 트와 de 카레실나 두균기 민체 나로 nga zo chawa 강시 제베 값소 jigden chöge de ngochyo de 할레바 각보도 왔어 믹세 nga랑 chö기 닝예we nga tsuki mila soba yote tenzo chala nga tsuki ji jigden기 cha와다지 땅 된데지나 내데도 아니 ngazu gi jigden chöge de dende khadu ngo soyen de khagbu dus 아니 ngazu jigden chöge gi wangi ngazu gi susu gi chowa numbu shu chemo mangbu lig do was 아니 코랑기 트와 카레슬나 dende gi ngazu gi chowa numbu dende ji leba la ngazu gi pa donglen che cheda jigden chöge de ngo chöche dende gi jigden chöge gi wangi ngazu gi 수수 셈랑 ngazu chowa numbu le di ngazu gi de donglen che twela 탑시에 가리오레슬라치
다 되레. 되된 말에 당아도 직대 쇼제 왕도 컴데라 벳. 다 나주도는 세워다 너무 그 제바 먹어제 직대 쇼제 왕도 돈에 대በት 컴다 거라 쳔네. 근데 되게 먼저 직대 쇼제는 그 도단데 먼저 라래 힘 받어지. 저대 거다. 대선자 안에 대왕간 소반동 소반동 불라이라 소바다. 근데 좀 어떠냐냐. 근데 봐. 대왕도 만들어야 답장 제도고 다 개체셔데 제대 처지에 된다 제대 처지에 된 건데 라네 때 많이 받지 다 먹고 되죠 등어도 제바데 안 신에 칼리라 안데 왕도 만들어야겠다 답람 줘스 양세양세 오데 제대 처지에 자 데더라다나 가야요 말했어 잘라도 녀바나 가야가 나 세고요 미사 안데 많이 봐야나 또 가나디데 용거리나 뺏을 게 없었다 가나디데 그 잘라야고 녀바나 가나 소소 점데 즉 채널 내가 더 전에 야본 여원에 빼거나 수는 용 그래. 이나 빼거나 가나 살게 버려지. 아니 지금 매중간에 빼 독트 셈바티. 마 빠셔 버려지. 근데 맞을 수 없다. 그래서 나한테 거기 뒤뒤에 용 그래 나고 셀로 줘라. 셀도 때 맞지. 왜 등하다 나 지금 가나 좀 당하죠. 메라타나 남사직 콘로나에서 서고 용해 그래. 나 대가서 다대 체 맞음도 삼대 삼로 치고라. 남살렘니 메라타나 남사 야메타셔지. 들었다는 어떠한 하래 있었는데 야트 요마르 미사 들어마다이나 다하나 대를 삼는 어디에 삼로 땅도 왜나 데이트 클릭 되는 마 점도스
So Geshe said that this is the fact. It is definitely the fact that we usually are very much inclined or influenced by these eight worldly dharmas. And in our lifetime, so this is according to Geshe, it's because of many lifetimes that we are being under the influence of these eight worldly dharmas, that in this lifetime we become very much sort of like influenced by these, and that very strong emotions arises during those situations. So in those cases, one should, so the only way to be able to counter this particular eight worldly dharma is to practice and then to recognize whenever this thing is arising. For example, if someone is praising you, let's say, for example, if something good happens, it is nature that one will become happy. But then at that very moment, understand that, yes, it's good, I am happy, but then to also say that I should not be overexcited over this. I should be happy, but not overexcited. Similarly, if something bad happens to me, I shouldn't be so sad that I go into depression. I have a very low self-esteem. It is natural to be sad, but not to be so sad that one becomes depressed. One have a very low self-esteem. That in life, if someone praises us, to feel happy, but then at the same moment say that, it's just a word. It will not change the person who I am. Similarly, if someone insults us, blames us, to think that he just blamed me. Okay, they just blamed me. It's just a word. There's no reason for me to feel that bad about it. And so, doing this kind of act, sort of like this kind of practice again and again and again and again, to overcome the influence of the eight worldly dharmas.
Thank you. Very helpful, Geshe.
That's okay. Kadin chesu.
That's
So just let me know when to stop and do the dedication prayer. Shall we?
yes.
Okay, I'll just share the screen. Dedication prayer from Shantideva's way of the Bodhisattva. May all beings everywhere plagued by suffering of body and mind obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or even fall ill. May no one be afraid or be little, with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food, may the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvest. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and those bound to be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then, may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Geshe-la, for the precious teachings. And thank you, Lakpala, for the translation. And deep gratitude to this center and everyone who has joined here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Geshe.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Thank you,
Tenzin
Kapala.
Master.
Thank you, Geshe.
Thank you so much.